Another common question that I get asked often when I'm doing book cover design is about hardcovers. When you're doing print on demand, which is what most self-publishing authors are going to do, you're basically going to do a Kindle or an ebook version, which is just the front cover, and you're going to do a paperback version, which is the back and the front and the spine in the middle. And the spine, you're going to have to measure the final page count after formatting to get the spine width right. So your formatter, your book cover designer can do that, but you've got to finish the formatting first. Createspace has a great print on demand for paperback books, and it's the cheapest and it has the best distribution. So when I'm recommending options for self-publishing authors, I'll always point to Createspace. There are other options. You can go with Lulu, but it's more expensive. You can go with IngramSpark, which was Lightning Source, and some people say it's better quality, and it probably is, except CreateSpace quality is really good enough. And unless you're comparing the two books side by side, one from IngramSpark, one from CreateSpace, you're not really going to notice the difference. Readers aren't really going to notice the difference. If you need really nice professional looking books for example, book signings or events, you can think about making a hardcover version. It's nice to have. The problem is hardcover is just extra work. So your book cover is your book cover designer is going to need to do more. They're a little more difficult to set up because you have to make the hardcover flap. So it's the back and the front, and then an additional flap that goes in on both sides that's going to have more information. So if you're starting out, if you're self-publishing, if you've got a back cover description but you don't have a lot of reviews or you don't have other information, if you put everything on your flaps, then you're not going to have anything on the back. So you may have a problem of, what do I put? I have this extra space, but I don't have any extra information. And so you don't want a book cover that it looks too sparse or doesn't have enough things on it. Also, when you're doing a hardcover with flaps, you're probably going to need to set it up with Lulu, which is really expensive, or you're going to need to set up with IngramSpark or Lightning Source, which has pretty high setup fees and then also change fees. So if you make mistakes, which you're probably going to do, or you screw up on the book cover design or the formatting, which is going to happen, you're going to have to pay extra every time you upload a new file to their platform. The reason that big traditional publishers publish hardback books is because they cost a little bit more than paperbacks to produce, but the markup is much higher. So instead of a paperback selling for $12.99, a hardback can sell for $25.99. So they come out with hardbacks first, and they print a lot of them, and they force people to pay extra, so they make more money with those hardbacks than they would if they were just printing paperbacks. That's what traditional publishers do. You're not publishing with that model. Your marketing funnel, your earnings, it's not following the same model. For you, if you invest the money to make a hardback copy, very few people are going to buy it because 85% of your sales are going to be ebooks and maybe 5 or 10 is going to be paperbacks. You're not going to sell enough copies. Like you'd have to sell 100 copies of the hardback to make up for the investment fees to get it designed and produced. And that might take you a year or two to sell 100 copies of the hardback, unless you're ordering those hardbacks yourself and you're doing book signings, you're doing author events, you're actively out in front of people with a stack of those books, selling them hand to hand. If you're doing that, then it might be worth doing because you can sell the same way. You can set a higher markup for that. However, it's more work. They're heavier, transportation costs, delivery. It's easier to do book signings and events with a stack of paperback books, and the markup's pretty good also. You can sell them for 15 or 20 bucks, and they might cost $3 or $4 to print on Createspace because Createspace's POD printing is pretty cheap. So for me, I would never, I did it for my first big book. I had hardbacks designed and they look great. It's nice to have those on my bookshelf. Some people probably have those on their bookshelves and they enjoy that. I also got hundreds of reviews from some pretty famous people from my first book. So on those flaps, I have pages and pages of nice reviews, which I wouldn't, like if you have a paperback, you can't display all that stuff as well. But for most books now, when you publish, like when I publish now, I want to publish cheap and fast and get a lot of reviews, and earn money with the book so that I can see if I should, if it earns some money, I can spend a little extra and turn it into a POD or a paperback. Some people do the paperback right away because they said it helps boost up ebook sales, which might be true. For most self-publishing authors on a budget with no platform, I would always caution and be wary about spending a lot for the first book when you have no platform and you haven't tried marketing yet. You don't know what you're going to do to sell the book, because unless you get all your ducks in a row, unless you figure everything out and learn how to market your book's not going to earn any money. And if your book doesn't earn any money, spending $1,000 as an investment, it's not a smart business decision. It's vanity publishing. Vanity publishing is fine if this is a hobby and you want to have that book published just to have it, or if you're building up a practice, if you need the book to make yourself look more professional, if you're selling services or coaching or something else, it's a good idea to put out a book even if no one buys it, just so you can say, I wrote this book, and you have that on your website. That's a credibility booster. There's a lot of good reasons to write a book. There's not a lot of good reasons to invest a lot of money publishing the book unless you make the money back. And it's very possible to make the money back if you know what you're doing, if you're writing the right kind of books, if you're publishing it and designing it well, and you're building the right kind of reader platform that's going to keep the book selling without you having to do a lot of advertising or social media or promotion. If you figure all that stuff out, writing books is a great business. You can write a lot of books quickly, you can design them well, you can keep publishing, and you build up recurring income, which is really hard to beat. But it's also competitive, and it's not that easy to do well. And there's a lot of people starting out with their first book with nothing, and they're ready to put down a couple $1,000s to produce their first book. It might take them another year just to figure out how to set up an author website, or how to start writing blog posts that get the right kind of traffic that convert into avid readers and followers. So I mean, it's difficult because I kind of got distracted, but it's difficult self-publishing because it's easy to get a lot of things wrong. If you're starting out doing everything by yourself, and if you don't have a big budget, or even if you do have a big budget, it's easy to spend a lot. It's true your book has a better chance of success if you've put in the money to get it produced well. But on the other hand, a lot of authors are writing books that are never going to be bestsellers because they wrote books with no reader pool. They wrote a book in a genre with a very tiny percent of people who are at all interested in reading that topic or that story. So if you've written a book that nobody is interested in, even if you spend a lot of money making it look really good, even if you spend a lot of money marketing it, even if a lot of people read it, it'll never take off because the readership isn't big enough and your story just isn't quite, it's not necessarily not good enough, it's just that it's not written in a genre popular enough to sustain long-term earnings. And that's what you got to think about if you want to be a career author and writing books to make money. You have to think about, what are the popular categories? What can I write in those popular categories that's going to beat out everything else in that category and stay at #1 so that I keep earning money from that one book? And then you want to publish, 10 or 20 books a year. That's one way to make money. I know a lot of authors who only have 2 or 3 books who are making a fortune because they've written very good books and they spent a long time, but they also produced it well, and they got very good covers, and they put up a good author website, and they did some marketing. It's possible to make money with a couple books. It's possible to make money. I mean, Hugh Howey's first book, this is the new cover for Dust, but when Wolf first came out, the cover was really terrible. He made a lot of money on that book anyway, despite the cover, despite not having much of a platform, because it was a really good story, and he put it out there and people liked it. That's possible, and it still happens. So I mean, never give up, but always focus on publishing, focus on getting your book out there, getting people to read it, focusing on something like a hardcover where maybe a very tiny fraction of your sales is going to be from that hardcover book. It's probably not worth holding up your publishing date. It might take you an extra month or two to design that hardcover, when you really just should have put the ebook out and started putting it in front of people and trying to get people to read it to build up your reviews, because that extra 2 months, I mean, as everything else, there's a lot of decisions. It's a very complex field. There's a lot of choices. Um, Hardcover is not something I would put time or money into, because I don't think it's going to earn a return on your investment. I don't think it's very important. I don't think most readers, I mean, even on Amazon, if you've got the choice of a Kindle and a paperback and a hardcover, few people are going to buy the hardcover, and your profit margin is going to be the same from a paperback or a hardcover, because you're not printing 1,000 books or 5,000 books. You're print on demand one by one. That hardcover is not going to earn you probably as much of an income as the paperback would, because it costs a lot to print on demand a hardcover book. Anyway, so I wouldn't recommend it. It's not something you want to be thinking about. It's not something to worry about. I think it's a nice reward. If your book does really well and you make a lot of money, then buy yourself, like, get a hardcover made for as a special reward, or as a reader bonus, for a prize or something. But it's not really something you need to worry about when you're starting out. Thanks. Bye bye.